Yes, people, what's happening? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another live stream and your daily transfer update. Big up to everyone that's locked in over on Chelsea Fan TV as well. And guys, a new week and there's plenty more news to get through as well. Ruben Loftus-Cheek is set to now complete his long protracted move to AC Milan. It was on, then it was off with the directors being sacked, and now it's back on again. Looks like that's going to be completed tonight. Potentially, AC Milan also interested in Christian Pulisic. Chelsea have rejected a bid from Galatasaray for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang as well. Interest in Dusan Vlahovic, and Juventus would take Romelu Lukaku as a replacement. So maybe there could be some sort of deal going on there potentially as well. The Mason Mount saga drags on again. Will he stay? Won't he stay? Let's wait and see what happens on that one. A potential pursuit for Maignan. More on Moises Caicedo as well. There's loads and loads to get into as always. I'm delighted to be joined by Mo. Mo, welcome to the channel, mate. Thank you for coming, bro. Massively appreciate it. What have you, first of all, mate, what have you made of everything that's gone on so far? It's been almost about 3 and a bit weeks since the season finished now. What have you made of kind of the transfer activity and all that sort of thing that's been going on with the club?
And first of all, thank you so much for having me on. It is an absolute pleasure to be on your channel. And as for how I'm feeling about things, honestly speaking, I've just been really looking forward to seeing what sort of outgoings we have first, because I do think that determines a lot of what we are going to try and do in terms of rectifying the squad issue that we have. And I think when the season was ending, there was 2 things in mind that I had. I said, for me, we need to confirm a new manager as soon as possible. And the second thing for me was basically about outgoings more than the incomings. Reason being is because we've just had so much incoming that I'm like, this squad is clearly not clear in terms of who's actually part of the plans and who isn't. And I was looking forward to seeing that, a bit more clarity on that. I feel like at first it was quite quiet. I feel like we were seeing a lot of links, a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes. But for the most part, it was pretty down quiet. And I think it had everybody worried. And then one day, the Saudi clubs just come out of nowhere and we just have plenty of deals all happening at once. That put a smile on my face, because that let me know that, you know what, maybe us being silent is actually a fantastic thing for once, because we're doing work behind the scenes to facilitate those moves happening. And it feels like we're hitting the right sort of notes in terms of our business dealings at this point, because last year, this time, we were way too loud. And it created a whole load of chaos that we paid for with that season that we've just had. This time, it feels like we're a bit more calculated. We're a bit more self-assured. We are a bit more composed about how we get things done, with the exception of the Mason Mount saga, which just seems to have so many twists and turns. So personally, that's the only one that's caused me a lot of stress, because I'm just like, I just want a conclusion. I'm tired of hearing from both camps. I don't really care no more. I just want to know what my club looks like going forward into next season. I want to know who's committed. I want the saga to just be over. If he wants to stay, and if the issue is that we are not offering him the contract, then offer him the contract. If the issue is that he's not willing to sign a contract and he wants to leave, then let's facilitate, but also let's get the right amount of money for him, because we don't just want to be a club that anyone can just approach and they can take our players and we just have to take whatever they give us type of thing.
Yeah, no, but I hear what you're saying. I think one thing for me as well that's massive is that we actually look like a serious outfit in the transfer market again. Now, I don't want to go back and kind of slag off the previous regime, but it was clear for me that the reason we were in such a mess and had to sign so many players in January is because of the chronic misprofiling of the squad, shocking recruitment over the last 3 or 4 years, not building when we're on top, missing out on the likes of Tchouameni, probably missing out on Declan Rice as well, not refreshing the squad when we needed to, signing the wrong players, signing in the wrong areas. And then suddenly, this has been waiting to happen for years. And it's just unfortunate that, it's happened in the first year of a new ownership. And yes, we made mistakes in the summer, but I think going forward now, there should be less of those mistakes. We've got, obviously, the footballing people in place at board level now. Bowley's not doing everything. He's taking a bit of a back step. And as you say, for me, the only negative has been the Mason Mount situation at this point in time. But everything else has been pretty positive. I mean, we're not even at the end of June yet. And all right, yes, we can count ourselves a little bit lucky. We've kind of hit the jackpot that Saudi are looking to massively invest in their domestic league, and we've happened to have 3 players that are very marketable to them. But of course, those guys have got to agree to the move. You know, they have to want to go as well. It's not just a one-way thing. We can't force them out the door, so they've had to agree to go as well. So yeah, okay, you could say we've got a little bit lucky there. But in terms of our other outgoings here, is obviously Kovacic is gone, Kai Havertz gone as well. You know, and there's Azpilicueta on his way out, Loftus-Cheek on his way out as well. So you're looking at it then. You've got 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players already, if you include Aspi and Loftus-Cheek. Question mark over Mount could be 9. And you've got Pulisic, Chalobah, Gallagher, Aubameyang, Hudson-Odoi. That's another 5. That could be 14 players if they all leave out the door. I mean, look, the board have taken criticism. They definitely have. But I think we've got to be fair and give praise where it's due. This is a sort of squad overhaul that I don't think we've ever seen this before. Like that day, the other day last week, we had like 5 outgoings before midday, all confirmed. So, I mean, have you been impressed with how we've actually managed to shift this many players this quickly and for some decent prices, and some players, rather than the price, the massive high wages off the books? I thought we'd really struggled to get rid of the likes of Koulibaly, Ziyech, Havertz as well. And you know, we have done a great job.
Yeah, we have. I think credit where credit is due. Like, let's not make any mistakes about it. Like, these new owners have made mistakes along the way. There are certain things that we can hold them accountable on, but they are learning. They are trying to understand where they've gone wrong, and they are trying to rectify the mistakes that they've made. I think what's really positive about the window so far is that, as much as we've been talking about, you know, the players that we'd like to see in our squad, I think as a fan base, we're all aligned that we just had too many players. We needed clarity. We needed this bloated squad to become a bit more trimmer, and have Pochettino come in and start with a squad that he at least knows, hey, these are the people that this club wants me to invest my time into. Now I know what to do, type of thing. I felt so bad for Graham Potter in this sense, because this is what I was trying to make people understand. Even with Thomas Tuchel's ability to manage, I said there's only so much he can do. This squad clearly needs to be rebuilt. And for me, Thomas Tuchel earned my trust and my respect in what he was able to accomplish for us. And then obviously the disagreement between these lot happened. And then before you know it, he's out of the door. And I'm thinking, okay, well, let's see what your next steps are, because that will tell me a lot. They give Graham Potter 5-year contract. And you're thinking, you know what? Okay, you might not necessarily be like, this is the same caliber of managers, but at least they sound like they have a plan in motion that they are trying to follow. And I'm like, if they do follow it, then at least we know what sort of picture we're trying to build. And then 7 months later, we are basically talking about 4 managers that we've gotten rid of. Everything about this past year for us, I think, has been a bit of a nightmare. But I honestly started to feel positive from that January window. Why? Because the players we were linked with, the types of signings we were making, you could see the people behind the scenes that we've hired to actually identify these talents, negotiate for these talents, have actually now started to have an influence on the type of players we were going to sign. It's starting to look like, and maybe we could be completely and utterly wrong, and we might be jumping the gun on this one, but even the squad that we're building is starting to look like there is some sort of complements that they can have with each other. And I think for me, I've said this, Chelsea is so good at, for a long period of time under Roman even, we became so good at patching things up and going again to compete again. But we became an inconsistent club, and we have to admit what we were seeing in front of our eyes. And because we weren't managing our squad correctly, we were misprofiling signings, we were looking at stats too much and not understanding how to use these players within the systems that we were trying to play, that unfortunately we were not getting the best out of any of our signings. And that's where I think we have a massive problem to address, and I'm starting to feel like we're going to start addressing it now, because we're starting to make the right collective decision that makes the squad come first, rather than just, you know, we sign someone because they have 40 GA or 50 GA in whatever league. Don't let that fool you. We need to look at exactly how this squad can play together on the pitch. What are the traits? What are the profiles that complement each other? And how does a manager then get the best out of them? How do we develop on their talents? Now, the problem we have, and we have to admit this, is some of these players, their values are completely inflated. Yeah. So there's going to be like an expectations management that we're going to have to start actually coming to terms with, that just because we've signed Mudryk for the amount that we've signed doesn't mean we've gotten the same type of level of play as we've done with Enzo. because they're clearly different. One is definitely far more raw and needs more work. One is far more assured and has shown at even the big stage in terms of the World Cup that he's ready to actually do things right now. And with him, it's less about polishing, but more maybe if you can add things to his games. Whereas with Mudryk, for me, and players like him, despite what amount we sign these players for, we really need to look at developing players, and that is what will be the success of Chelsea Football Club. Is how well can we develop these players that we're investing into, and if we do that correctly, I think we are talking to Manchester City directly after that. Because right now, as things currently stand, we're not ready to win. We need a period of stability. We need a period of development. We need a period of alignment, and that's what I think all these different factors now need to bring together, is that we as a club actually know what we're doing.
Yeah, no, that's the key thing. And, you know, look, Chelsea have always spent money, but in the past, the answer's been, oh, let's just spend more money. Let's try and buy our way out of our problems. You know, when was the last time really that Chelsea actually signed players and then made them better? Like, you know, it's not something that happens very often. It really isn't. No. And we're in a situation now where we spend a lot of money on players. And the answer every single time players don't work out can't just be let's keep spending and try and spend our way out of trouble. You know, you've got to coach players. You've got to develop what you've got and improve what you've got. Yes, you're going to go and buy players. Of course you are. But number one thing is, can we improve what we already have on our books? If the answer is yes, then let's stick with it rather than going and spending 60, 70, 80 million on someone else to try and solve the problem. If that doesn't work, let's go and do the same again. You just keep spending money when actually, you know, we've probably got decent players in the squad, but we just haven't had the right coaches to get the best out of them. We haven't played in the right system, the right formation, or whatever it is. You know, if we can develop some of these players, and, you know, you look at this squad, and yes, you know, we had a shocking season, terrible goings on last season and whatnot. But, you know, with all these names going out, with the people that are potentially, hopefully going to be coming in, the squad is a really good squad. It's just going to need a little bit of time to get things gelling together and to get ourselves kind of, you know, used to each other again, which is why obviously we're all gutted we're not in Europe. But actually, you know, with so many players coming out, so many players coming in, a new sort of streamlined squad of maybe 24, 25 players playing once a week, actually having all that additional time on the training ground is going to be a massive benefit for us. With a new manager, you know, we need to get ourselves fit. The one thing that Lampard was right about was this team was not fit. So bad. We were so unfit. You know, after 30 minutes, we just looked fucked. And then, you know, Portugal will get us fit, will get us running about. And, you know, having that extra time on the pitch is great, because when you're playing like midweek, weekend, you know, you're having a recovery session, you're having a light session before a game. You know, that's 2 sessions gone. There's hardly any time to work on anything on the pitch. It's not excuses. It's just reality. There's not much time to work on the training pitch of things. So actually, you know, I'm not saying we're going to be amazing next season or anything, but playing once a week, having no European football and that additional time on the training ground should be a massive plus for us. But, you know, again, it's going to depend who comes in. I've got no problem with all these people leaving the club, but the guys coming in have got to be better than what's going out. There's no point just replacing some of these players with similar quality. You've got to be upgrading on them. Otherwise, for me, it's almost pointless getting rid of them. Obviously, some of them want to go and didn't want to be here. That's fine. But, you know, if we're saying the likes of Kai Havertz or whatever it is, like, we need to make sure that the next guy that comes in is better than him. You know, there's no point replacing with like for like. So, you know, yes, these outgoings are great, but I'm going to hold judgment a little bit on the window until we see what comes in to replace it. Because if what comes in to replace it is not better, then it's not really a great window in my opinion. But mate, let's move on from this. Let's start with one outgoing that looking like it's almost done. Ruben Loftus-Cheek. How do you feel about him going? Because obviously, you know, he's been here for a long time. He had a couple of loans, one at Palace, one at Fulham. He was so good under Maurizio Sarri, and it feels like, you know, it's just one of them sliding doors moments, that injury and that friendly before Baku in the Europa League final. Because it's one of the biggest what ifs for me. Like, what if he hadn't picked up that injury? Because he was playing some phenomenal football, and just, you know, he got himself back fit again, and he had some decent performances for us, and he's always been, you know, a really dependable squad player. Never moaned about his minutes or anything like that. I actually feel it could be worth keeping him round in the squad, but I think it's clear that he probably wants to move. It's really best for his career. He's got aspirations to get back in the England squad and play regular football. Serie A will be decent for him. You know, he'll be playing with Tomori. the league might suit him a little bit better. But ultimately, I don't want to say it's a shame, but it's just a massive what if. How do you feel about Ruben leaving?
And I'm actually happy for him, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
I think over the years we've seen how unfortunate he's been as a player, that every single time he started to look a little bit decent, injury niggles have started kind of impacting on his ability to perform. I think also what's been a shame is that, and this is where I feel like there's a collective issue we've always suffered from, is it's really difficult as an individual player to continuously be consistent if what's around you isn't consistent. And we've been an inconsistent team ourselves. And I think when you look at that type of perspective, it's a shame, because I feel like what could have been with Ruben Loftus-Cheek is what I always think whenever I think about him as a player. I remember with him under Sarri, and when he was playing with alongside Hazard, I thought, you know what, this is it. This is our midfielder for the next 10 years. He loves the club. He is one of us, and he's going to be the guy that does what he needs to do. I think one thing I respect about him, despite everything that's happened, he never really kicks up a fuss. And I think that's a reliable squad player at the very minimum. But I feel like he's better than just being a squad player. You sometimes see him on the pitch and you're like, he can do incredible things, but he needs somebody to just give him that run of game time and allow him to play through bad form so that he can just become that consistent player. And I just feel like right now, where we're currently at, maybe this new journey will be the thing that helps him to kind of reignite his career in the direction that he's wanted. I think he has aspirations, like you said, for the England squad. He wants to be able to kind of reignite his career to a point where, he's respected the way that he was as a youngster. And in order to get there, sometimes you just really need to be able to make a move and take a risk on yourself. And I think that's what he's doing here. For a moment there, it looked like with the whole mess that was happening at Milan, that this whole deal was completely written off. And if that was the case, I'll be very honest, he's one of the players that I would have been more than happy to keep, because he doesn't kick up a fuss. I think he's a true professional. I'm gutted to see him go in one way, but I'm also happy for him from an objective point of view.
I mean, mate, do you think 15 million euros is a decent price for him? I mean, it doesn't sound like much. I think he's only got a year left on his contract. I think he's out of contract in 2024. But for someone that's 27, probably still got some very good years ahead of him. We know Italian clubs are pretty stingy with the finances, always try and, get away with paying as little as possible, or doing some sort of loan with an obligation to buy, which has been reported that could be the case. But that's basically a permanent sale anyway, really. Do you think that's a fair price? I would have thought, maybe I'm just a bit deluded in this thought, but I would have thought we could have at least got 20 million for Ruben.
I think you probably could have done if we hassled, but then you need to remember who you're dealing with. Yeah. I think Italian clubs just don't have money like that. Hence why you end up having to lower your valuation more often than you'd like to in order to get deals across the line with them. So I'm not surprised by the valuation based on the fact that we're dealing with AC Milan. And I still think they're better than the other club, where they are actually putting money on the table rather than just saying, let's have a loan with an option to buy, which I'll be very honest, most Serie A clubs, that's sort of the method of their business that they like to go with. So I'm quite happy with the amount we're getting. But also what I'm looking at from this perspective is, look, I understand obviously we both would be quite happy with the fact that he could be a squad player for us. But the minutes that could be afforded to him could be valuable development game time for another player. And we've signed plenty of youngsters. You've got your Santos, your Caicedo, who's had a wonderful, tournament as well, coming off a decent loan. You've got, Santos, who obviously had also good competition showings, as well as just he's been highly touted. He's been respected by a lot of teams now. And I think that tells me that, okay, you know what? We lose Ruben Loftus-Cheek, but we could that sort of game time could be put towards development of another player. And from that perspective, I do see the positive. It's just not the most reassuring, because you don't know what you're going to get with these youngsters. But that's part and parcel of this game, is that if you do not take these risks, you don't know what sort of players that you're missing out on, because you're signing players, but then you're getting other clubs to do the work for you. It's no wonder these players don't feel a sense of connection or risk or a sense of value from us, because we're not taking the risk on ourselves. And I think we should.
Yeah, no, I agree, mate. You know, you look at it on the one hand, yeah, you think Ruben's been dependable and he'd be good to keep round the place. But actually, in the long-term interests of Chelsea, as harsh as it may sound, it's much better for us to move Loftus-Cheek on to allow a Chukwuemeka or a Caicedo or a Santos, as you say, to take those minutes, because those guys are the future of the football club. Loftus-Cheek isn't the future of Chelsea. So, yes, you know, there's always that worry, and people always go on about, oh, Chelsea need to sign experienced players and whatnot. But we've done that a lot. We've signed a lot of experienced players in the past. Your likes of your Lukaku's, Higuain, Morata in the centre forward position. We've signed a lot of experience before, and it hasn't worked out. So why not try a different tact and go down the younger route? Age doesn't dictate experience. You can still be 20, 21, 22 years of age and be experienced. If you've been playing first team football since you're 18, you've got 3-4 seasons under your belt. That's quite experienced as a player. Obviously, you might not be experienced in the big moments like winning trophies and stuff, but you have experience under the belt. It's not like you're being chucked into Chelsea and you're playing and like you've never played a senior game of football before. Like that just isn't the case. So yes, it's sad to see Ruben go to an extent, but actually those minutes are going to be much better used for a Chukwuemeka, for a Caicedo, for a Santos. And that's the way we've got to start looking now. You've got to be looking at succession planning. You look how, I know this is a slightly different example, but you look how Real Madrid, for example, when they still got that old guard midfield. I know we don't really have we kind of had, you know, the Kovacic, Kante, Jorginho situation, which has all moved on now. But when you go in from Casemiro, Kroos and Modric, Casemiro leaves, everyone thought that'd be a massive problem for Real Madrid. No problem at all. They've succession plan. They've got Tchouaméni, they've got Camavinga, they've got Jude Bellingham, and then they've got obviously Valverde as well. So those four. So they're going from Casemiro, Modric, and Kroos to Camavinga, Tchouaméni, and Bellingham, which is an unbelievable succession planning. That's the sort of thing that we need to be doing. And I think we are going down that route now, is that when we phase these midfield players out, like we are, like your Kovacic's, like your Loftus-Cheeks, like your Kantes and whatnot. Yes, I'm not saying that we're just going to not buy anyone and just rely on the youngsters to take those places, but you know, we might not need as many midfielders as people think, because we've signed these players for a reason and they need to play. So, you know, those minutes can be of use to them. So I think that's the way that Chelsea have got to go. People might not like to hear that because people are scared of change and different things. They're always like, oh, we have to go for the big names, have to go for experience. But that hasn't served us well in the past. So let's try something different and see how we get on. At the end of the day, it's like, how much worse can it be if because what we've tried before with the experience has not worked really. So, you know, let's have a look. And ultimately, mate, you know, that 2021 Champions League winning side, the only players left from that starting lineup, I think, are Chilwell, James, Mount, and
Silva.
And Thiago Silva. Yeah, that's it. Those four, and Mount's questionable. So, you know, we're already from 2 years ago having a massive change as well. So, I mean, let's wait and see what happens on this one. You know, in terms of, like, obviously Loftus-Cheek will be replaced, but you know, let's wait and see kind of what youngsters stick about as well. But just sticking with midfield, mate, let's talk about Moises Caicedo briefly. Obviously, you know, we were expecting a bid last week. The outgoings have taken a little bit longer, which is why the bid's not come in yet. The outgoings are, Fabrizio was saying, the outgoings are the priority this week. So there might not be a bid this week, potentially.
Yeah.
But where do you stand with Chelsea and Caicedo? Obviously, we don't want to have a situation. So reportedly, personal terms are agreed. Brighton have set an asking price at 85 million. Could change if Chelsea feel lowballed or unfavourable instalments, but Chelsea don't intend to do this to avoid competition. The aim is to bid this week, but it could take time as Brighton are tough negotiators and no interest will likely come in for Caicedo in time. So Brighton are probably looking for some sort of bidding war. We do need to kind of, I don't say get a move on, but considering we're in the driving seat for this, we really don't want to be in a situation where we've seemingly been at the front of the queue and then we just get robbed at the last minute kind of thing. I mean, where do you stand on this Caicedo thing? And I'm not saying it's going to be like a one and done in terms of a bid, because it very rarely is, but we know we have to get this player. So we can't be fucking about going in with like 65 million. We're going to have to be pretty close at our first attempt. I mean, how do you see this one playing out? Do you ultimately see us getting him?
I think ultimately I see us getting him. I think the fact that we remain so calm about it, it's quite a confidence boost. It can be a bit considered a little bit complacent on our part, but I think when you see how, you know, situations are fallen, I mean, the Arsenal dropping out of the race for Caicedo just kind of eased our path in the sense that they've said they're going to put all their eggs in the basket of Declan Rice, and we don't know what's happening with that situation, but they're clearly pursuing that as a priority over Caicedo. And so you already are communicating to the player one thing, but then also from the perspective of Manchester United, up till recently, they weren't even linked with him. So it looks like we're the only club that have been very serious in trying to negotiate with the player and get something done. But also we're the only club that has come back the second time around the way we have done. So it shows our seriousness and our intent. I think you're absolutely right. We cannot be coming back into the table for negotiations with Brighton and be unserious in our first attempts of whatever bid that we try to place. I think it has to be as close as possible to that 85 million mark that everyone seems to be speaking about. The fact that it's going to be installments to me means that the valuation is really not that important to us at this point. What's more important is, and this is what I've been trying to think about things, is are we trying to sign him before this 1st of July so that we can use the ability to make him sign a longer contract and obviously use that loophole that is being closed from the 1st of July? I think that would be brilliant for us from a business perspective, because from a financial fair play, we understand that it's over the length of the contract rather than the shorter amount the contract will be forced to give him. And so that's what I'm more interested about at this moment in time. But you're absolutely right. It's at the end of the day, we've gone to bed and come back, and it looked like Enzo was not coming to Chelsea, even though when I was going to bed, it looked like Enzo was a done deal.
Same with Ugarte as well.
And the Ugarte thing is, I was about to bring that one up. I was literally hook, line, and sinker. I was like, yep, we've got our player. I was singing his praises. And the next thing I know, he's picked PSG. He's changed his mind. So I think from a player perspective, we have shown our intent to him. It's more so about our negotiation skills with Brighton that are going to be the key factor. If we mess about, it will cause the things that we're trying to avoid. But I do think the club is very conscious of that, and they'll want to get this done as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree on that. It's always a nervous wait though, because we know that other clubs later on will come into the race. So the longer this goes on for, then I'm not saying that obviously personal terms agreed is great, but players can agree personal terms with a number of teams. Like you can say yes to more than one club. The personal terms is the easy part. It's the agreeing a fee is the really hard part. Obviously, you want to check that the player's open to the move first before you go and bid. You're not going to bid if a player's not keen to make the move. But I look at it and I think it'll be a fantastic move. I always said from the beginning that we had to get one of Declan Rice or Caicedo. We're not going to get Rice, so this has to be Caicedo. Otherwise, there's a massive problem, because then you're looking at it and we need someone that's going to be good enough to sort of transform our midfield pretty much from the get-go. Rice or Caicedo would have been able to do that. Say we do miss out on Caicedo, you're then scrambling around and you're quite fucked, essentially, because I'm not saying that Romeo Lavia is a bad player, but he's not on the Caicedo level yet. He's had one season in the Premier League. He's still decent and he could do a job, but that's not going to be the level of signing that transforms the midfield from the get-go. Neither is someone like a Manu Kone. And then, you're scrambling around. There's not that many top draw midfielders available that are going to make a big difference straight away. So we cannot afford to be in a situation where we try and lowball or we take the piss or whatever it might be. We know Brighton are hard to deal with, which is why we've got to be pretty serious from the get-go. Yes, there was a 60 million bid earlier in the summer, apparently turned down. 5 mil more than our approach in January. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Mate, how do you see him complementing Enzo? I mean, if we go the pivot or if we go the 4-3-3, I'm sure we'll see a combination of those formations. But Poch predominantly goes with a 4-2-3-1. Do you see Caicedo being a great complement for Enzo in the middle there?
100%. I think what's very nice with both players is they're both comfortable in dropping deep, receiving the ball, being part of the build-up play, but also they're very comfortable in finding areas of the pitch where they can kind of have, options for whoever is on the ball and allow them to kind of progress the ball in a manner that really helps the team to kind of make the most out of their final third. I think that's why I'm really happy with someone like him. It's the fact that I know for a fact that he not only immediately improves our team, but we know that he is the type of partner that we've been looking for Enzo to have. And I think Enzo's game will be even much better than what we've already seen. And we've already been quite impressed with him. I think the freedom this type of player gives you is just that comfortability of knowing that he's not somebody that is lacking in the experience in the Premier League. He's been at Brighton. He stood out there at Brighton. To me, this gives me the feeling that I had with N'Golo Kante. Obviously, N'Golo Kante won the title with Leicester City, and each, merit to their own. But in terms of breaking through and making a name for yourself, this is that is as similar as it gets in my eyes. Is that when someone comes through and is able to impact the game that much that every big club is talking about them, you've got to take what they're able to offer very seriously. And I feel like he's a very versatile player. I still think there's certain things you can fine tune in his game, but I saw those improvements even whilst he was under De Zerbi. The first game was completely different to by the end of the game, where he looked so much more self-assured. He was playing at right back at one point, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what the hell can this kid not do at this point? So from that perspective alone, I think this is a brilliant player. I am not hesitant to put that type of money on him. Not to say that he's worth that type of money. We all know how inflated the market is, but we know the quality we're getting is the type of quality we're looking for, especially when in the space of 6 months, we've gotten rid of Kovacic, N'Golo Kante, and Jorginho, all in the space of 6 months. That tells you that, hey, that midfield is the focus. That midfield is the part we're going to upgrade the most. And this is the statement signing that you want to be making.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree, mate. And you can talk about the fee, but if it ends up being 80, 85 million pounds, of course, that's a lot of money. But I'd actually look at it and you'd think, well, on the books, it'll be amortized over 5 years, unless we sign him before July 1st. But it'll be amortized over 5 years. Say it's 85 million pounds at a max over 5 years. Roughly, that's like less than 20 million a year, which is not bad at all financially. But then you look at it and you think, right, Caicedo, 21 years of age, Premier League experience, the potential to improve is massive. He's already dominating midfields, and he could be a mainstay in the midfield for the next 5+ years. Like, there's not really a downside to this transfer. Like, there just isn't. Obviously, there's potential for it not to work out, but you look at him and he ticks all the boxes for everything we need. So, yeah, obviously it's frustrating as fans. You want things done quickly. Obviously, transfers don't really work like that. You don't just pick the phone up, ring, and just be like, look, here's 80 mil. All right, job done the same day. There's a lot of negotiations with that amount of money being, transferred around. But I think Chelsea can feel confident, but we don't want to get too carried away and think, oh, this is a done deal, and allow other teams to come in and give Caicedo a bit of a decision to make. But let me just get to a few things in the chat. Big up to Louis for becoming a member of the channel. Guys, if you want to become a member of the channel, just hit the link in the description. That's both channels. You want to become a member of my channel, you want to become a member of Chelsea Fan TV, hit the links in the description, guys, and you can join. As well, people, make sure you're smashing the likes on the stream as well, guys. Let's get these likes up. It massively helps out. So please do that. Just hover over that thumb button, give it a little click, people. And it helps out more than you could imagine. It gets more people watching, it spreads the stream around, gets it, on the YouTube homepage, all that sort of thing. So I know I bang on about it, but it does massively help out. So we can get the likes out, it would be greatly appreciated. And people, if you could subscribe to both channels as well, if you haven't done so already, guys, I will put the links to both channels in the chat. Make sure you subscribe to myself, on the road to 4,000 subscribers before the season starts. Not too far to go. And make sure you show some love to Chelsea Fan TV as well, guys. On the road to 200,000 subscribers over there. So, yeah, if you're not subscribed to either channel, make sure you subscribe to both of them, guys. It's greatly appreciated. I mean, Mo, sticking with midfield, mate, we touched on it a little bit earlier. If Caicedo comes in, great. Do you feel we need another one on top of him? Because there's a link with Lavia, Liverpool been in talks. Now, Chelsea haven't really been that concrete. Yes, they like the player, but other than that, it doesn't really seem to have gone too much further. Manu Kone, not too many talks. Kefram Turam, similar. I know we just chatted about maybe giving the youngsters a bit more of a chance. I mean, Pochettino could be potentially looking at doing that, but do you think we'd be a bit light if we went in with Enzo, Caicedo, Chukwuemeka, Cassidy, and Santos as our five?
And I can see people's points in terms of saying that they're more in favor of us going to get another player. Honestly, I would hold off. And the reason why is I think I'd look at the opportunities that present themselves. If there's the right type of opportunity in terms of a profile of play that really we don't have and we could make good use out of, then potentially definitely look at those types of signings. But honestly, I wouldn't just go back into the transfer window with the mindset of like, we just need another player, therefore we just need to go sign someone. Reason being is because I do think we need to think about the development of the players that we've already invested in. But number two for me, and this is a big one, is we don't have to do everything all in one summer. Because we like that at the end of the day, you want to give yourself a little bit of room to breathe where you can add to the squad when and if necessary. If you fill up this squad with a lot of players that already have 5-8 year contracts, it means that we're kind of putting ourselves in a position where over the next set of windows now, our business is already done without even having to open that window. And it's much better from us as a club perspective if we just generally bide our time, get the right signings. It's not about the quantity, it's about the quality of the players, it's about the profiles, and we keep focused on that. And for me, Caicedo, if we sign him in midfield and that's the only signing that comes through, unless there's more outgoings, we don't need to dip into the midfield area. And again, I would feel like there's other areas I'll try and prioritize.
Yeah, no, I do agree on that to an extent. Look, I mean, if it was a case of spending 40 to 50 million on Lavia or giving those minutes to a Santos or a Chukwuemeka, I actually think it could be, whilst, it's always exciting with new signings coming through the door, is that really the right way of going about things? Potentially, like Lavia, yes, he's got a season of Premier League experience, but he's only 6 months older than Andre Santos. Like, what sort of, that's another player that's kind of, I don't want to say blocking the pathway as such, but as another player kind of in the way, as it were, to some of these talented youngsters we've already signed. I'm not saying we shouldn't go out and sign another midfield player. If a very good option becomes available and it's going to make a difference, and absolutely, let's go and do it. But I think we also need to look at, as you've said, what we've actually got at the club already. And we've got 3 of the most talented young midfield players in Europe, in Chukwuemeka, in Caicedo, and in Andre Santos. Now, I'm not saying that all 3 are going to play a part, but 1 or 2 of them can absolutely play a part. And, people talk about quality. The age range that we're looking to sign in right now, that kind of 18, 19 to sort of 22, 23, whatever it is, there's not that many top quality midfield players around. And, if it's a case of, let's spend 50 million on Lavia or let's give Andre Santos a go, I think that's a bit of a no-brainer in my opinion. But again, it's not going to be popular with people because people think, we must have quality, we must get experience in the door. Like, what options are people wanting? Because we missed out on Agate. We missed out on. We haven't missed out. Agate's gone. Declan Rice is not going to happen. We've got. Kone maybe, but that doesn't seem to be too much going on there. Lavia seems to be more advanced with Liverpool/Arsenal, and then Kefram Turam. There's like on the list, quote unquote, as they always say, but there's not really much else out there. So I actually think the youngsters could be playing a much bigger part next season than many people think they will. And I think that's the right way to go ultimately. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say we shouldn't sign anyone else, but we need to think about it and be careful. We absolutely need a top-class midfielder like a Caicedo, but at the same time, do we actually, unless more players leave, if Mount were to go, then maybe we need to bring someone else in. But if it were to stay how it was, or if Gallagher goes or whatever it is, then maybe a Gabri Vega, for example, someone like that, one more to come in like that, but it's slightly different, a bit more attack-minded. So, yeah, look, I think it's going to be interesting. Let's kind of see how it goes on that front. But, mate, I want to move on to goalkeepers because that's always a I say interesting discussion point. There's a lot of Kepa haters out there. Actually, look, for what it's worth, I've said before, people in the chat know this, but, Kepa's not as bad as people make him out to be. Yes, he's not going to be a goalkeeper that's going to win Chelsea the Premier League, and we absolutely need to upgrade there. But if he were to be number 1 next season, that's not as big a disaster as people think it is. Yes, I want us to get a new goalkeeper, but if the right goalkeeper is not available, then I'd rather us save the money and look at the goalkeeper situation in a year's time or whatever it is. But just on it, obviously Mendy's gone. We do need another goalkeeper. What are your thoughts on the goalkeeping situation at this point in time? Because it looks like we've pulled out of Andre Onana. There's been nothing real there. We like Mamavashvili at Valencia, but again, would he be a first choice? Would he be coming in as a second choice? And then we're also considering a move for Maignan, who will be very expensive. We've pulled out of Onana for financial reasons. Surely Magnan's going to be just as much, if not more. Where do you sit with this goalkeeping situation? You've got Selena coming through, but I don't think he's quite ready to be a number 2 yet. Certainly not a number 1 at his age with a lack of experience. Onana would have been great, but that looks like it's gone cold. Just we could come back in for him. What are your thoughts, mate? Because the goalkeeper market's not great either.
It's really not. I think, honestly, the honest truth is we've needed a goalkeeper since we've lost Courtois.
Yeah,
And respect to Kepa, I think Kepa was a player that we signed under a lot of stress because we just needed to get a deal over the line, and we paid what we paid for him. He's had multiple chances to really make the play that position his own, and I don't think he's as bad as we make him out to be. But I do think he doesn't instill confidence in the players that play in front of him, and I think that's where the problem lies. Is when that happens, that relationship is very important for us to resolve in some sort of way, whether that's changing the players in front of him or whether that's changing the keeper himself. I do think last year was probably the one of the bigger improvements I've seen in him, where I've had a bit of hope. But even then, I still would say he's a backup choice at best to me.
yeah,
And I do think this goalkeeper situation is far more urgent than people realize. And I do think it's one of the things that keeps us back. And Onana for me became my first choice, especially after that final. And I had already had high hopes in him from when he was playing for Ajax. That's the keeper that I wanted us to initially sign before we signed Kepa. But for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Then the whole ban stuff happened. It is what it is. I just wanted to know under Inter, has he still got the same sort of traits as a goalkeeper? Is he able to comfortably play out from the back? Is he able to make important saves? Does he instill confidence? Does he communicate effectively? And all of those boxes for me, he ticks. Maignan falls under that same category. Again, a goalkeeper that I watched at Lille as they were winning the title there. I thought really highly of him then. I then saw him get injured, unfortunately. And I think towards the back end of last year.
yeah,
And then he only came into the team towards the end of the season with Milan. And it's unfortunate because I still think both of these keepers are really top class keepers, but both of them happen to play for clubs that will be looking to cash in on them, which means bad news for us. So when we do go in there, unless we have players for these clubs, which surprisingly we do, we have
yeah.
players for them. We don't seem to be finding a way to negotiate with them for the keepers because they want to deal with that completely separately, entirely on its own. And that's a downside for us because they are going to try and make us pay because they are aware of the fact that we desperately need a keeper. So it's a tough one. And I'm surprised that Pochettino is just very happy with going with Kepa at this moment in time. Martinez is an interesting one because that's the one where I'd settled on. If we get worst case scenario Martinez, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And
But he's not
I don't know
as well, though. Like, surely he's be
but
as much
because
as
he's
both
trying to
be.
leave. But because he's trying to leave, I thought there was an easier way for us to get this deal done. But it's gone cold turkey. Like literally, I've heard nothing about it.
There's nothing at all at the moment. There are a few
So
murmurings in that, but there's been nothing for weeks now. And I think, look, obviously, number two, we need another goalkeeper. Regardless, it just depends now. Do we bring in a number two and try and reassess the situation next summer, or do we look to bring in a number one now? And it looks like, for me, it's between Maignan and it's between Maignan and Onana, but neither of them to me seem that likely, and both are going to be very difficult deals to do. And yes, we've got players that Milan are interested in. Christian Pulisic is also interesting AC Milan, but you see, there's a reason why these player plus cash deals or player swap deals very rarely happen unless you're Barcelona and Juventus, trying to fiddle the books a little bit. Like it doesn't, like there's a reason it doesn't happen that often because there's so many parties that have got to agree on so many different things. And yes, you'd be like, oh yeah, we've got a player that might be interested. But ultimately, if that player doesn't want the move, then that swap deal is falling on its arse before you've even got anywhere. So yes, there are people in the chat and like people in general was like, oh, let's just do a swap deal. It's never that simple, unfortunately. It's why you don't see them very much. But I don't know. I think another issue with the goalkeeping situation is that, of course, with Kepa, like we tried to get rid of him before. He was close to joining Lazio or Napoli on loan, I think, last summer, but that didn't quite materialise. Like the wages he's on, it's going to be very, very difficult to find any takers for him. And look, Pochettino, I think, would be. It's weird, isn't it? Because obviously, as when a new manager comes in, you're going to want to assess the goalkeeper in training before you make a decision.
Exactly.
But, like you almost, and that's why I feel that anything to do with the goalkeeper could easily rumble well into next month, into July, maybe even maybe until we return from pre-season. Because I think Pochettino will want to have a look at Kepa, and maybe he feels that he could get more out of him than other managers have potentially. So, you do want that stuff. You do want that. You do want to be able to assess the goalkeepers. But I mean, obviously, we said that Kepa's not the best, and we need to upgrade. But do you think it would be a disaster, mate, if he was the first choice again next season?
No, I don't think it'd be a disaster. I've seen Sarri with a worse squad do a good job in getting the best out of Kepa. So
did have Hazard as well to help us.
he did, but again, when you think about it from the defensive perspective, we didn't really concede too much under Sarri, and in comparison to what's been happening over the last more recent seasons, and I look at Kepa and I think we sometimes make him out to be the biggest issue in our squad, when the reality is there's a collective issue. I think when you have so many errors in your games as a squad, that is one of our biggest things that we need to correct. The amount of goals and errors that we give to opponents is something we need to address, and it's something that I think has been bugging me far more than just the keeper. I still think at some point we do need to address the goalkeeping situation in some way, shape, or form, but it needs to be the right keeper. The last thing I need is for this decision to be rushed and we end up signing someone that then is also wrong for us. So from that perspective alone, if we need to slow down and say we want to get this right, we're going to do more scouting. We're going to make sure we do more negotiation behind the scenes to try and get the right type of deal for the keeper that we would like at our club. Then so be it. I support that decision. If that means that's one more year of Kepa, and from next year on we have a keeper that we can rely on for 5-10 years, who am I to complain at that point? I'm nobody to complain. But right now, as things stand, I think the reason why it worries so many people is because we're seeing upgrades happening in a lot of areas. We're seeing a major overhaul. Nobody expected Kepa to be the guy that stays. And you kind of feel sorry for Mendy. Mendy, I feel like had a shorter period of time where he was not on top of his form. And then he was benched, didn't want to sign the new contract. He's out of the squad before you know it. And it's a shame, because when you look at the money side of things, if you think about who would have been kept, I would have thought Mendy would be more likely to be kept because he's on lower wages, and whatever he's demanding is something that is far more reasonable than whatever Kepa is on already. So it's a bit of a shame, but I understand why things have happened the way they have. I just want us to get it right. And if Kepa has to stay for one more year for us to get it right eventually, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's about getting the right decision. It's not about just hastily bringing someone in. We've done this too many times before. It's better to wait and get things right than rush it and get them wrong. And we've got things wrong too many times before. So we need to if the right target's available this summer, absolutely go for it. But if the right target's not available this summer, let's say we're going to go for Maignan. If Maignan says, actually, do you know what? I want one more year in Milan, and then I'll come to you next summer, then let's wait. Let's not then go and panic buy someone else. We are going to need to buy a goalkeeper because we need a number 2. But I think it's a lot easier to find a second choice goalkeeper than it is to find like a new number 1. So that's going to have to be the kind of route we're going to go down. And ultimately, this is another thing we've got to stop doing. I mean, I think we are going to stop doing it now. Is the reason why we can't get rid of Kepa is because under the old regime, we were just handing out ridiculous cash to whoever was coming through the door. And that's why we can't get rid of Kepa, because the wages are ridiculous. It's like 150, 160, I think. Like, there's a reason why we can't get rid of him. And he's not going to go to Saudi Arabia. So, there's a reason why clubs aren't coming in, because the money's too big. But, mate, what are your thoughts on Costa from Porto? There's been not really anything from English media or Europe as such, but there seems to be quite a few reports in Portugal talking about him. He has got an expensive release clause. I think it's about £65 million. That's a lot of money. I'd almost rather spend that on a Nana and Maignan, if I'm being totally honest. I don't think Costa's terrible. Portuguese number 1. He's obviously experienced Champions League player and whatnot. But I don't know about this. I mean, it wouldn't be a disaster, but it doesn't strike me as someone that's the first choice for the club.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I rate the keeper, but again, I've watched the other 2 keepers more than I've watched him. Hence why I'm way less comfortable splitting that type of money for a keeper like that. And I think obviously the fact that they are under some sort of financial sort of obligation to sell potentially could be meaning that we don't have to pay the release clause and we could get him cheaper. But if it means that we're getting him for a similar amount of money that we're being quoted for Maignan and Onana, I think we look at Onana and Mignano because they both are keepers that I think have proven at the top level that they're reliable keepers. They're comfortable on the ball, and I've watched them a lot more. I feel more comfortable with going with keepers like that, and I don't feel as comfortable with Diego Costa. But from what I've heard from the people that do watch him quite a lot, they do rate him quite highly as well. So it's a tough one, I think. And Chelsea just needs to assess their situation very carefully and make sure they make a decision that is best representative of what we want to do as a squad.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, mate. And we're just going to have to wait and see what happens on this one. As I said, Pochettino's going to assess Kepa in pre-season. So I think the goalkeeper situation, unless something is available to be done quickly, like this is going to be one that could be one of the last things to be done. I think I would be expecting us to not really have a goalkeeper until pre-season's done. If we are going to sign one, because as I said, Pochettino is going to want to assess Kepa and kind of make his own choice there. Mate, let's talk about strikers briefly. Obviously, we've signed Nicholas Jackson. Very quickly, mate, what are your thoughts on that?
And good player from what I've seen in terms of the money we're paying. And clearly, in my opinion, this looks like a one that we're trying to develop. I'll be very surprised if he's the first choice. And I'm unfamiliar with him in the sense that I haven't not watched him over the course of a season. I've watched a few games of his. There are definitely areas of his games that are really strong and quite favorable to us. But there's also areas in which I have a bit of doubt. I think his physicality is my biggest doubt at the moment. Doesn't look the strongest of players, but he looks quick. He looks like he can link up really well. He looks like he knows how to find the net. So there's certain things that are falling in his favor. But my question is, how well can he deal with physical teams that sit deep and give you no space? Because that's a lot more often than not, Chelsea Football Club will be dealing with those types of oppositions. And I always have to ask myself, is my striker prepared to do that? And how well can he deal with that? So it's a tough one. And I think if we're going to sign another striker, I'm happy with him. If he's our number one choice, I have no idea what to expect.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tricky. And, yes, people are calling for another striker, and we probably do need another one. But again, like the goalkeeper market, the striker market's not great. We're not going to get Victor Osimhen. We're not going to get Harry Kane. Those are the two big names on the market. Then looking at players like Dusan Vlahovic or Lautaro Martinez. And then you maybe players like Kolo Muani. But there's not actually that many decent strikers knocking about. Ivan Toney would have been my choice, but obviously the betting bans put pay to that. I look at Jackson, I just think it's a win-win, really, because we're not paying a big fee. If he does well, then we've got a good player for us for cheap. If he doesn't, in 2-3 years' time or whatever it may be, he'll be about 24, 25. And you'd imagine that we'd at least make our money back, if not make a slight profit on him. So it's kind of win-win from that situation. He's going to develop. He could be decent. 12 goals in 26 appearances is not bad for Villarreal. And, people moan, oh, it's not really a big name. But then if Brighton or Brentford or someone like that had signed him, they'd be like, oh, wow, their scouting so good. But then Chelsea do it. And it's like, well, why are we doing that? Why aren't we going for someone better? People want us to find these players before they become good players, but then moan when we try and do it as well. So it doesn't.
You can never win.
you can just never win. What I would say is that, I think he's a decent finisher. I think, he's quick. He's direct. He takes players on. Obviously, for someone of his height, he's not that great in the air, but he'll develop. He'll obviously develop as a player. And I think Pochettino can get good development out of him and develop his game. But we have to be patient with him. It's going to be tough. He's not the most experienced player. It's a new league. The step up from Villarreal to the Premier League is going to be big. But again, I think he'll get ample minutes. There's obviously a plan to use him, and Chelsea have obviously seen something in him that makes us think that he's going to be able to offer something. So I guess we just have to get behind it and back it. We've signed loads and loads of expensive proven strikers in the past. Absolutely haven't worked. So why not go down a different route? It can't be any worse than the hundreds of millions we spent on centre forwards over the years, who have had massive CVs and goals galore in the game and have been a disaster at Chelsea. So as long as we don't give Jackson the number 9, I think this could be all right. And before we get on to Vlahovic and stuff, how big a role do you think Armando Broja is going to have this season? Because reports are saying that Pochettino is a fan of him. I think Broja actually would have played quite a lot last season if he hadn't got injured.
Yep.
But I mean, how do you see him being used this season? This is a big season for him coming back from that injury.
Everything is dependent on exactly what you just said there, the injury. And he's ahead of schedule. It's great to hear. I'm happy to hear that. And he looks in good shape from what people are saying. He looks hungry. He's ready to go. I think it's also quite fitting that it's a new manager that's there and it's preseason that he's coming back in, because that's a great time for you to start establishing that relationship with someone. If I'm really honest with you, when I remember Harry Kane under Pochettino, it was kind of the same type of story in the sense that Harry Kane was just a player that Spurs were not willing to give a chance to. And suddenly, when they started to give him a chance, and suddenly a manager is able to coach him further and further and use and make better use of him, you saw the best out of Harry Kane, to the point that till this day, we speak about one of the best things at Spurs Football Club is Harry Kane. Without him, there is no relevance at that club. And I think that that's something that excites me when I think of Broha, is that he needs somebody to invest in him just in the same way, because the attributes that I see in him as a player, he's very physical, he's deceivingly fast, and he's very, very, very good at being able to kind of make something out of nothing. To me, gives me the vibe of Diego Costa. And it sounds insane to be making those types of calls, but when you've watched him the way I have, he is somebody that I did not expect any of this from when I saw him in the youth team, because when he was in Cobham, he was nowhere near as built as he is now. So from that perspective alone, I'm quite excited for Broha. Whether he ends up being the number one choice is a completely different story, because I do think the injury and the impact it's had on his speed and his explosiveness will say a lot about how well he can trust his body to do the things that he was so good at doing before and he was showing a lot of potential with. And it's whether we are able to take those risks with them. I think Pochettino's the right guy, though. That's the thing. Pochettino's the right guy to kind of do that type of risk and give him those opportunities. So it's now just about seeing how well that injury recovery has gone.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think there's potential there. There's good attributes there. There's good ability there. He's shown that he can perform well-ish in the Premier League. The first 6 months of his own at Southampton were decent. He was scoring goals. He looks quite good when he was playing sort of in the first half of the season just gone. Scored a great goal against Wolves. He's got that pace. See if he's lost a yard of that ACL injury or not. His physical attributes, he's strong. The club clearly believe in him. He was close to leaving, but then he signed a new 6-year contract. Now you could argue, is that them believing in him, or is that them just trying to protect the value of an asset? Could be a bit of both potentially. But I think there's definite potential there. Pochettino is one of the best managers around at developing youngsters, so we could see something decent there. But again, I think, having been screaming out for a goal scorer for so long, it would be a big gamble, in my opinion, to go into next season with Jackson and Broja as our main strikers, with Nkunku also, who could do a job there. I'm not saying it would be any worse than the big names we've had in the past or that road we've gone down, but when you're looking to address goals, and we were 30, 40 goals short last season, easily. I don't know if 30, 40 goals are going to come from Nkunku, Jackson, and Broja. That would be my issue, but maybe it can. I'm not sure. But mate, what are your thoughts on Dusan Vlahovic? Obviously, Matt Law reporting today that Juve are interested in Lukaku as a replacement for Vlahovic. Chelsea signing Vlahovic and selling Lukaku would kill two birds with one stone. Well, I absolutely would. I mean, what are your thoughts on Vlahovic? I mean, because we're linked with two Serie A strikers in him and Lautaro Martinez. Lautaro seems to be a fan of his. We don't tend to hear an awful lot about Vlahovic, but on Vlahovic, he was close to joining Arsenal from Fiorentina, went to Juventus. Hasn't really worked out too well for him. I don't think Allegri's style particularly suits him that well or gets the best out of him. I think there's a talented boy there. If you could find the Fiorentina Vlahovic, then you've got a very decent player on your hands. But, I mean, what are your thoughts on this one?
And I think he made the wrong move. He signed for the wrong club, if I'm honest with you. I genuinely do believe he could have banked for Arsenal had he made that choice, because you just have to look at that Juve squad. It's an aging squad with a manager that, in my opinion, is far too pessimistic in terms of how he plays football, and I didn't feel like it best complemented his traits as a footballer. I think he's a good finisher, and I understand last season he's not had the best of return on that side of the game, but I do think that the team has affected him far more negatively than people realize. And he's physical, he's strong, He's got an eye for a goal. He's able to finish from a distance, but also find himself in the right areas in the box. He's dangerous in the air. There's so many aspects of his game that at Fiorentina that I was like, freaking hell, where did this striker come from and why is he so good? That when he signed for Juve, this is the dip I expected to happen to him. And then he's now in that dip and they're now looking to get rid of him. And I do think it's the best move for him. If we can get Vlahovic and we get rid of Lukaku in that process, it's one of the best things we've done as a club, in my opinion, because I do think his traits are far more transferable to the Premier League style of play. And it would be very interesting to see a player like this under Poch and us having a young, hungry squad, how he could lead the line for us. And I do think he would get far better and goals return rate than what he has at Juve, because I do think we just need to fix our issue in terms of creating chances, which I think Graham Potter was far more closer to than people realize.
We were creating a lot of chances, way more than we did. Like as soon as Lampard come in for the last 10 games, our chance creation went through the floor. I know we weren't scoring under Potter and we were losing left, right, and centre, but we were actually creating a lot more chances than we had in a long time.
Yeah, and the issue we have is that if people were to try and realize sometimes, just objectively speaking, what are the issues, sometimes it is player related, sometimes it's a system related thing. I look at Vlahovic and I don't think he's gotten worse as a player and we've overrated him. I think he's actually a good player. He's a good striker, but this Juve team is not good enough. We have to say it as it is, and they've clearly got to do a massive rebuild at that club. I don't know how they will, based on all the madness that's happening at that club in terms of now apparently they're trying to even get out of playing in the Conference League, which I'm like, I don't know what the hell's going on. But again, difference of opinion is a difference of opinion. I think if you don't rate him, then fair enough. Maybe you didn't watch him the way I did when he was at Fiorentina, and from that perspective, he had no right to be as good as he did when he was there. Somewhere in the middle is where I think I see him as at, and I think he's far better than what we've seen him at Juve, and that Juve is far more at fault for not bringing the best out of him. And if we can get him and we get rid of Lukaku in that process, which we all know how we feel about Lukaku, it's business well done from everybody.
No, it absolutely is. I mean, as much as Lukaku loves Inter or claims he does, I'd be surprised if he went to Juve. But we've seen similar stranger things happen in football. In terms of Lautaro Martinez, another one that's linked with the club. Look, I like Lautaro. I think he's a decent player. Back-to-back 25-goal seasons in all competitions for Inter Milan. He's predominantly paid in the 2 over the last few years, up with Lukaku, up with Edin Dzeko. I actually think he's good. The only question mark people have over him is, can he play up front on his own? Because we're unlikely to play a front 2. It seems that that Pochettino seems to be a bigger fan of Lautaro than he does Vlahovic from reports that are out there. Do you think Martinez would be a better fit for Chelsea than Vlahovic would be?
And again, these are different profiles of players.
Yeah, it's totally
and
different.
This is where my issue lies with it. Lautaro, I think, would frustrate a lot of people. We would literally call him the new Werner, just the Argentinian Werner, because he misses a lot of chances, but he offers a lot in terms of his work rate. He's a very hard worker, and he's very good at finding the right type of spaces and being in the right sort of situations. But again, I say that the reason why we see Lautaro the way because when he was back at his home country, again, I saw a different play, a play that could finish. Now I don't actually associate him with those things, and it's because he plays for Inter, and it's just the way he's been used over time.
Yeah.
Finishing is not the thing that they try to carry on working with him. Instead, they use his work rate, they use his other ability and technical ability, which I think that's where his strength lies. His technical ability, his link-up play, his ability to actually find the right space. He's good at those stuff, but then he can't finish. And if that's the case, again, Chelsea fans have seen this far too often. We don't want that. So it's a difficult one. I think they're two different profiles. Personally, I would prefer Vlahovic over Martinez, but if Pochettino's very confident that he can get the best out of Lautaro and show me the same version that I saw back in his home country, then hey, Pochettino, I'm willing to back you as a manager. You get the play that you want.
That's one thing that I definitely agree on, is that we're all going to have our individual opinions on what strikers we like and who we want. But ultimately, if Pochettino decides that he wants Lautaro Martinez, He thinks that he's going to be right for his Chelsea, and he's going to be right for the system he's looking to play, and he thinks he can get the best out of him. Then we absolutely have to believe in the manager and back the manager and give the manager what he wants to the best of our ability. Obviously, we're not going to be able to get every single one of his top targets, but we've got to back the manager as much as we can, give him as much chance as possible with the players that he wants. And if he decides that Lautaro is his guy, then let's roll with it, because the other options out there aren't particularly good. And people go on about Osimhen. Guys, we're not going to get Osimhen. It just isn't happening. For 120, 130 million euros, the other teams are going to be interested in him. With no Champions League football, you're looking at a top player. It's going to be very hard to convince him to come. In my opinion, but I mean, strikers again. There's not really too much going on. I think once outgoings get finalised this week, I think next week and into the first couple of weeks of July is when we perhaps might see a lot more things heating up in terms of incomings. Matt, I just wanted to move on to the final thing before we round this one out. We couldn't possibly talk all things Chelsea without touching on the Mason Mount situation. I know the guys in the chat on over the last couple of days have been banging on about it. There's been kind of a few more developments, as it were, as such. Let me just find it now here. Mason Mount will report for training and make himself, I don't know why this is news, will report for training and make himself available for Chelsea's pre-season tour of the States if a move to United remains on hold. Funny, well, it's not really news that professional with contracts turns up to his job. Not exactly an unusual thing. But mate, where do you stand with all this? Because 1 minute he's going, reportedly, and he wants out. The next minute, he actually doesn't want to stay. And then there's what is clear is that there's been nothing offered to him since February. So people that say if he wants to stay, just sign it. There's nothing for him to sign. Like whether you want him to stay or not, there's nothing on the table for him to sign at this point in time. So of course you're going to look at your options, because otherwise you're going to go as a free agent, And the Chelsea are saying that they want Mount to stay and stuff, and then ultimately, for me, the actions of a club that has offered a 1-year extension in February to a 24-year-old, which is quite frankly an insult and disrespectful. You've offered nothing since February. That's not the actions. That wouldn't show to me that, this club wants me to stay. So I'm not saying that, the club, it's all on the club, and I'm not saying it's all on Mount. There's obviously big faults on both sides. And ultimately, for me, I feel that Mount has been receiving a lot of really bad advice. He switched agents recently. I think his dad perhaps doesn't give the best advice either. It never seems to end go particularly well when you got family members involved in your contract business. So that Christensen was repped by his dad. Players are represented by family members at times, and it doesn't particularly end well. I just think he's been really, really badly advised, and ultimately, I don't know, that offer's still on the table for United. United maintain that that's their final offer. And if Chelsea decide to go back and accept, then they will. If not, then that's kind of the end of it. Where do you stand with all of this? Because deep down for me, and I could just be being naive here, I actually don't think Mount wants to leave the club.
And I think Mount wants to leave the club. I'll be so on it. Yeah, I think he does. I think the relationship between the owners and Mount has basically reached a point where basically it's no return. And this coming out when it did, for me, looks like damage control, because at the end of the day, if the deal doesn't work out, Mount is going to have to face the fans. And when he faces the fans, if the fans have already written him off, it's not going to be an easy environment for him to work in. So this feels like damage control to me. And I'll be honest, I just want the saga to be finished and over with. Whatever the case, whatever the truth might be, it looks like it's not working out for anybody involved. And the best thing that we can do is get the right amount of money and sell him on right now. I generally do believe that, because in terms of where things have kind of been going for months on end now, it's just both camps revealing stuff about each other, but not quite fully revealing the truth. So that tells me that both camps are doing whatever is possible to help each other, to help themselves out. But the fans are the ones that are having to suffer. Whether you like Mount or whether you don't like Mount, for me, is irrelevant at this point. Chelsea Football Club is bigger than Mason Mount. Yeah. I'll make that so clear to everybody. And for me, I want this saga to be finished so we can focus on fixing our club, on rebuilding our club, on making sure our club is back in the Champions League next season. This saga dragging on does not help the stability of our club. Hence why, for me, I just want a conclusion. It needs to be done. From what I can see already, I expected this Mason Mount deal to be done before Kai Havertz ever would have done.
Yeah.
The fact that Arsenal's interest came out of nowhere for Kai Havertz and has been managed to be done so quickly as it has lets me to believe that this deal is being hung up on based on valuation of that player and nothing else. Otherwise, I think Mason Mount is ready to go. The club are happy to get rid of him, but also at the same time, I think if that's the right thing for everybody involved, it just needs to happen in some way, shape, or form, because the damage for me has been done in terms of what can be retrieved from this. I don't see how it can be retrieved, because at the end of the day, you have to look at it from a match-going fan point of view. The people that I know that support Mount at games have all been really heartbroken by what they've seen unfold. Some of them where they are siding with him, but some of them where they feel like he's also playing a game. So it's regardless, it's a toxic environment for the player. So the best thing for the player right now, as things stand, he needs to go. That's simple as for me.
Yeah, no, I do agree to an extent on that. I just ultimately, if he ends up staying, he can't go into this season without putting any communication out to the fans. He has got to explain what's going on, because we don't know. That ridiculous day the other day, I think it was Saturday night, where we had a briefing from United that, they're dropping their interest. We're going to look at Caicedo. Then a briefing from Mount side saying, actually, you never wanted to leave Chelsea. And a briefing from Chelsea saying, Bayern Munich are also interested in Mount, and we'll sell him to them for less if you don't pay up. It was an utter madness going on. It all seems to be games. And in one way, it just, for me, it's a massive shame. Whether you think Mount's is good enough or not is irrelevant. I just it's a massive shame. This should never have happened. We've seen Reece James extend. We've seen Breyer extend, Chalobah, Chilwell, Thiago Silva. We've seen multiple guys extend. And for whatever reason, this Mount contract, there was no issues with any of those other extensions. Well, at least not played out publicly. This extension just seems to be problem after problem after problem. And, it depends what you believe, of course. But I think what is fact is that there's been nothing offered since February. So there is nothing to sign. And it's also true that there was an agreement, a verbal agreement in principle with Bowley before the World Cup. Then after the World Cup, those negotiations picked up again when Stanley took them over. And Mount's side claimed that those same terms that were previously verbally agreed then weren't there. Now, if we've changed the terms of the offer, then that isn't great on our part either. I think both parties are at fault here. And ultimately, ultimately from the club or from Mason's side, we just need some proper communication, because no one's got a fucking clue what's going on here. No one actually knows. Does he really want to stay? Does he feel forced out? Does he actually want to leave? Is he desperate to join Man United? I just find it hard to believe that, a lad that's been at Chelsea all his life would be desperate to join Man United unless something really bad has happened to make him feel like, fuck, I've got to get out of it. I could be wrong on that, but I mean, mate, do you think we'll ever get to the bottom of this situation of what actually has really gone on?
I don't think that either one of the camps will reveal this. I don't think, even if we was to sell him, I think we would we are never going to know exactly what went down. But from what you can see, if you look at it just objectively as possible, it looks like there was some sort of contract negotiation. There was some sort of word said. There was some sort of renegotiation of whatever that was maybe close to being agreed upon, to then just complete we don't want to talk to each other no more. And that's where we're at now. Now, the problem is, instead of just basically owning up that they can't both come up to some sort of agreement and that they will facilitate for a move, like maybe professionals would like to do so, we know how football works. Football's all about PR. And I think both camps are doing fantastic PR from their own sides to try and make the other side look like the guilty one. And it's a mess, because the people that lose out in the midst of all of this is just the fans, the people that just want to understand what's going on so that they at least are informed. And we're not going to be informed correctly. Each side is going to give us their side of the story, and we're going to have to somehow come up with the conclusion of what we think went down. Regardless, it looks like there's not going to be agreement that is going to be made between these two camps. That's why, for me, the healthiest thing that can happen is Mount just leaves.
I don't think we can afford to take a risk where we go into him next season with him, for example, and there's a chance we could lose him for free if we can't convince him. Like, you're taking a big gamble if we're trying to back ourselves to get him to sign. You'd rather take the 60. I mean, you want 65 million. There's a look. I respect the club for the fact that they're sticking to their guns. The player's under contract. You know what the price is. This is our price. We're not moving. If you want him, pay. That's how it should be. We can't be teams are going to try and take advantage of us, because we need to get rid of a lot of players, and people are going to try and take the piss. United know that 65 million is the asking price. So you either pay that and get the player, or you don't pay it and you go and find someone else. And so I respect the club to sticking to their principles on that point. But I also feel that, actually, as you say, we want this dealt with one way or another this week. This needs to be dealt this week. Pochettino starts work on the 1st of July, on Saturday, and then the players start coming back a week tomorrow, sort of in dribs and drabs sort of thing for pre-season. We cannot afford, under Pochettino, new manager, to go into pre-season with this Mount saga still not dealt with. We need a conclusion one way or another, because you don't want that going on in the background when you're coming into a new job. It's a massive rebuild. Lots of stuff needs doing, and you've got that going on in the background. And we don't want him being constantly asked fucking questions. Is he staying? Is he going? This week, you've accepted the bid from United, because I don't think United are going to submit a new bid. So you either go back to them, look stupid, and be like, "Oh, we will accept this offer," or Mount gets his head down. You stay in. If you're going to leave on a free, you're going to leave on a free, but you need to communicate with the fans or whatever, and then we move from there. We have to have an answer this week. This cannot go on. This cannot go on for another week. They really can't. It really can't. And I mean, look, it is a tricky one. I honestly never thought it would come to this. I never thought it would come to this, that Mason Mount would leave Chelsea for Man United. Are you, mate? Just very briefly, are you surprised that this is very close to happening in terms? Because I wouldn't have had Mount down to leave this summer.
I wouldn't have expected this whatsoever. No, I think but it just goes to show. Like, I didn't expect Christensen to leave. I didn't expect Rudiger to leave. I didn't expect Courtois to leave in the way in which he did. The only person that I generally did expect was Eden Hazard, because they came knocking God knows how many times. I'm like, eventually he's going to have to leave.
And it's Real Madrid as well. You don't say no to them. Exactly.
Whereas as things have happened in more recent history with us, we've lost a lot of quality players on a free. And to me, it doesn't surprise me that with Mason Mount, we've gotten to a point where there's 1 year remaining on his contract. We haven't found an agreement yet again, even though it's new owners. Because before, I would have blamed the old regime, and I would have said to you, the old regime are just terrible at getting these contract renewals done. But now I'm just like, I don't know what's going on, but whatever it is, it's not healthy. And we need to rectify this as soon as possible so that it doesn't create a toxic sort of thing that we're going into the season with. That's why, for me, it looks like the situation is over. We just need to accept whatever it is. So if it means that we accept their latest offer, of which I think a month's up to 60 million with add-ons.
Yeah, 55. It's 5. Yeah, that was rejected.
It's 5 million. I'd love to say, club, stick to your guns and do what you need to do, but it's 5 million difference. At this point, it's probably better for the overall feel of the team to just have this saga not be hanging over into the new season.
Yeah, no, mate, I absolutely agree. I'm sure there's going to be more on this as the days go by. Probably be more on it this week as well. I don't really know what's going to happen. Ultimately, I've got to the point now where obviously I'd like him to stay, but I'm actually beyond caring now. I just want this done. I just don't want to be talking about this anymore. It just needs to be finished. We need to move on from it. It's just taking up so much time, so much energy. It's an unnecessary situation for the club. But let's wait and see what happens on that one. I don't think there's much else to go through at this point in time. So we're probably going to round this one out. Guys, make sure you smash the likes on both channels. Let's get people. This is poor conversion rate over on my channel at the moment. Over 70 of us locked in with only 38 likes. Guys, we're doing Chelsea conversion rate here. Make sure you get these likes up, people. Let's get this to at least 50 or 60 likes over on Chelsea Fan TV. Let's try and get this up to 100 plus likes, guys. It does massively help out. So please do that. Let's get these likes up, people. Make sure you subscribe to both channels as well on your way out. I'll pop the links for myself and Chelsea Fan TV in the chat. So please do subscribe to both channels on your way out, people. Thank you, as always, to everyone for getting involved in the chat. It's greatly appreciated, as always, guys. And yeah, as I said, on the way out, smash the likes, subscribe to both channels. The links are now in there. Mo, thanks so much for your time, bro. Massively appreciated. If people want to follow you on Twitter and all that sort of thing, what's the handle and all that?
It's the handle that you see literally on screen. Please follow me on Twitter. If you want to talk about Chelsea and anything like that, that's where you'll find me, man.
Yep, guys, make sure you do that. I'll also link it in a description down below. If you can't be bothered to type it in, you can just click on the link. It will take you straight there. But yeah, guys, smash the likes, subscribe to both channels if you haven't done so already. I'll be back tomorrow with another daily transfer update. Let's see what news awaits us then. But until then, guys, enjoy the rest of your evening. Take care and up the Chelsea.